Again, I'm always excited. I always look forward to this moment because we get to have an opportunity to speak to some of our guests that we've been waiting for months and months to have. And so, um, I'm excited about this young man that we have that's coming on today. And I know Brian is as well. But we've been on the Black Podcast for, I keep saying a year and a half, but now it's really not a year and a
We're,
half. Like it's
we're
two
2 months
years.
shy of 2 years.
Sorry. It's like after a while, you just start being like, look, we're on. Okay. I don't remember what, I know it was a long time. And we're just excited that, it started out as an idea and now it's something that has made a huge impact in our Black community, with our young Black men. And then the relationships that we have built over the last 2 years have been phenomenal. I just really appreciate those that have connected with us. Uh, and who continue to connect with us, and also with our, amount of young youth that have reached out to say like thank you for that show, and people that have said, I never thought about my life in this manner or this space, and I really enjoyed this story. The one thing that we're really big on in Black Podcast, of course, is leveraging, right? And in order for us to leverage, and to grow within our community, you have to share. So when you're watching these videos, don't just watch the show and then log off. You need to do your part and share the show, because you never know who's in your circle of people that may need to hear these stories. And so if you're only keeping the stories to yourself, how are we supposed to grow? How are we supposed to leverage? How are we supposed to make these connections for knowledge, and be bold in our walk with whatever we're doing, whether we're entrepreneurs, whether we're working in the educational space, or whatever we're doing? In order for us to grow, we have to share. We have to share stories. We have to share knowledge. We have to share resources. So please make sure that you're doing your part and sharing, sharing, sharing. A lot of you know that I am the co-host, Dr. Sherelle Hobson. I have a background in education and athletics, and I've been doing that for a while now, 17 years. But I'm the creator of Win with Why. And I created that space because there were so many athletes who are feeling like they don't have the tools and the resources in order to move on to the next level. So I coach coaches on how to create that space for their athletes to be successful, making sure they have the tools that they need in order to leverage their skills and their talent. And so I had the privilege, while going through, creating the Win with Why, of meeting my partner here, Mr. Street, who has a background in social work and psychology. But we noticed that there were some common challenges that we saw within our Black community with our males. And that's why we decided to create the Black Podcast, to share these stories and these journeys, and also to make sure that we're doing our part, right? We have to all take ownership of what can I do for our community. And so that's why we create this space, the Black Podcast.
Yeah. I just look back at the years, how long we've been connected, and it's just flying. It's just flying by. And in that same breath, the amount of time that we have to impact this next generation is flying. It is flying by. So we got to jump on it. We got to take full advantage of every waking hour that we have to make the impact that we can. As was mentioned, Brian Street, academic background, social work, psychology. A lot of my professional work has been in the entrepreneurial space, whereas I use my psychology background to help people change their behaviors around whatever type of work they're doing. If they're in the financial space, or if I'm working with a client that has financial issues, changing your financial behavior. If you're working traditional employment, change how you look at your employment to start enjoying it more, or deciding, you know what, I don't need to be in this setting anymore. I need to be in this setting. When it comes to the youth, helping them change from believing that their future has to be what they've seen in their environment, what happened before them, and look at, okay, let me connect with this individual so you can see something that you've never seen before. Go and experience something you've never experienced before, and then you see better possibilities, bigger possibilities, more possibilities in life. And ultimately, whenever I link up with enough individuals like Dr. Hobson, like the guest that we're going to bring before you today, when I'm able to link up with them, my reach is that much further. Our impact is that much more impactful. So I do a lot of work across various different business, financial, human behavior spaces. I do a lot of work in the mental empowerment space with people who are just having anxiety issues, various different type of diagnoses, helping them at that surface level to realize why they're experiencing what they're experiencing and start to incorporate certain principles, certain mechanisms to change how they perceive what they're experiencing so that ultimately their emotions and their actions and what they eventually manifest in front of them starts to change. But today, we have a gentleman before us that he's in a space I really don't think we've had anybody to speak about the subject that he has an expertise in. Um, I think I'm missing a joke or something. I haven't seen any.
I'm laughing because I had like this smoke go by me. I felt like I was like in a Beyonce concert. So I'm like, what
Girl.
is what's going on?
Yeah, we go to, I guess we missing out on the party. But um, I don't think this topic that we're going to be at least part of the show we're going to dive into. I don't think we had another guest that really was focused on this specific topic. I have a couple individuals in my direct network that have been pushing, this community, this space for a while, and I'm highly interested in hearing our guest story around this space, how he's been able to emerge it, how's he been able to merge it with some of the things that he's doing in the educational space. So, without further ado, I'm going to shut my mouth and welcome to the stage, Marcus Esports. Howard, how is it going? Oh, I think we got you on mute.
Can't hear you.
know,
There we go.
for someone who works in IT and has an IT degree, I stay on mute when I get on Zoom and web calls. So thank you. I have to be reminded myself.
No, thank you. I don't know how many shows we've done where I'm just running my mouth and everybody's like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Um, but we thank you again for being a guest. You are amazing. And we just look forward to knowing all your business and getting and diving all in. Black people like, I don't tell people your business. I remember when I wrote my book, my mom was like, did you put all your business in your book? Like, yeah, basically I did. But so we want to thank you for, being available and being willing to share your story of who you are and why you're doing the things that you're doing. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm the creator of Win with Why. And so everything that we do is driven by our why, whether it's a good experience, a bad experience, or whatever it is. So we want to learn more about who you are before we talk about the things that you're doing. And we know every glory is a story. And so when we look at your life, social media, we think, wow, his life looks amazing. It's just perfect. He hasn't had any issues, any challenges. It's just been laid out for him. And so we know that those what we see videos and pictures aren't always the full story of who we are. And so we want to know who you are, where you're from, and the dynamics of your family, like how you grew up, your background, and so forth.
Sure. Again, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you everyone who's joining and tuning in. I hope this is both educational and entertaining. Long story short, I was born in DeKalb County, right outside of Atlanta in Georgia. I'm 36. And when I was 6, my parents, I have an identical twin brother, a sister who's 18 months younger than me. When I was 6, my parents bought us Super Mario Brothers 3 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And from that moment, I just became captivated by video games and then by extension technology. Because I believe that video games are the most immersive form of consumer media or any media that exists. Unlike books, unlike music, unlike film, TV, you actually get to be an active participant in the story where your actions create consequences. So that just inspired me to learn more about technology. I was blessed to be selected in a lottery for magnet school in the 9th grade. And shout out to my parents for motivating me to apply for the lottery and then go to school. I didn't have the wisdom at the time to understand how important magnet school was. In the 9th grade, they actually started trying to teach us how to write code, HTML, JavaScript, CSS. This is Web 1.0. And I didn't have any interest really in learning that stuff. It was boring to me. I couldn't connect the dots. It was just a book of a foreign language as far as I was concerned. But throughout that year in ninth grade, someone showed me that you could actually put video games on our graphing calculators. Because I was taking trigonometry, we had to have like expensive calculators, and they had graphs on them. And that same function turned it basically into a Game Boy. So once I learned it could be a video game, and then I learned that video games are code, I actually started voluntarily learning to code exclusively for the purpose of building my own video game. So while my parents are trying to teach me to code, I'm ignoring them and all the effort they're putting into it. But once I had the intrinsic motivation for video games, then I could connect with it directly.
Wow, wow. I remember learning coding. I don't know what grade I was in. I was like, this is a lot. This is a lot. Like all this going on, it was just a lot for me. I want you to really talk about and kind of elaborate. I didn't know if you was a part of any other organizations or sports or anything growing up. In our Black community, especially, I'm 40, you're 36. I know in that space, gaming and all that stuff wasn't as popular. It was mostly, let's be real, like the white kids were doing, we thought back then they are weird, right? We're like, oh, they are super weird. Like they're over there building something. And our community, we grabbed the basketball, we grabbed the football, we grabbed, cheerleading, whatever we could do. It just wasn't sitting and playing, we played the video games, but, we didn't talk about, I wonder how this was built, or I wonder, and so I want you to speak on when you started getting, interested in this whole gaming, and your family was kind of saying, hey, you can go and do this and pursuing that, while all your other friends probably, were they also interested in that, or were they doing the sports? Like, oh, Marcus is over there trying to build something, we over here trying to do a pickup game, and he over here trying to pick up codes. So,
Yeah.
what was that experience like for you, at that age, where you're in the era where Black males are still very active in sports?
Yeah, keep it 100. I was ostracized, because the community, exactly as you described it, just didn't embrace technology and gaming by extension. And it's ironic because, again, my sister's, 18 months younger than me. She picked up basketball. So she played basketball in middle school and high school. Coincidentally, we all were in the band, both, concert band and marching band in high school. But she did that and sports, where my brother and I did that and video games. So she started to build different social networks where we didn't. We built different networks, and coincidentally, many of them had more white people in them. And I grew up. I moved from DeKalb County to Rockville County. So to be fair, there were just generally more white people at the school that I went to. But that type of activity, you just didn't see a lot of Black people engaging in, because, like you said, like I remember when I was 6, my parents got tired of us playing video games. They would say, like, turn off that dang Nintendo, right? And then when I graduated from high school, as I'm 18, playing Xbox, my parents like, turn off that dang Nintendo and go outside. Mom, Dad, it's an Xbox. But that's the same case across like Black families in the Black community across the board. It's just a lack of appreciation for video games and the $180 billion global industry that makes video games happen.
Yeah, now you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. That's interesting because, like I was saying, it just wasn't something that, we were doing. And so when you transitioned from, being 6 years old in elementary and moving on to your middle school, and then high school, was there ever a time that you felt like, man, this is something I really want to do. I don't care who else is doing it. Or did you ever kind of take a detour away from it to get more into what everybody else felt you should be doing or thinking you should be doing? Talk about that journey for us.
Sure. So I did try to get into sports. I think like freshman year of high school. My parents played tennis when they graduated from college, just something they did before they had kids. And so, that seemed like something that I could gravitate towards. But I didn't used to be 6.5 feet tall. I used to be like average height or below average height. And then I had this growth spurt from like 8th grade to 9th grade. I just shot up overnight, and it impacted my hand-eye coordination. I was bumping into every wall. Like I just didn't have hand-eye coordination. So it didn't help me be athletic when, I could walk, right? I can walk from one room to the next, but I didn't have the kind of coordination where I could be athletic. So I think that helped me gravitate more towards technology. And in the space we were in, our school, we were lucky to have like IT programs as electives. So like I took a, intro to typing and computer networking, like, building computers. There were some tech classes that conveniently I was able to continue to gravitate towards.
Wow.
And coincidentally, as I'm doing that, there's less and less Black people down that track.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, can you speak on now going into college? So I know that you talked about your parents obviously went to school. So education obviously was some conversations that were held, in the house. When it was time to, and I kind of fast forwarded. So anytime you feel like you want to touch on anything that's important to speak on prior to this, please do.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting into this college world and, talk about when you decide, okay, I'm going to major in this. Did you get any pullback or pushback on like, well, you can't make no money doing that. You need to go over and do this. Why you don't want to be a lawyer, a doctor, or something else? So can you talk about kind of that journey for you? I'm assuming that because you got out of high school, being surrounded around others that were familiar with gaming and stuff like that. Was it easier for that transitioning into college to know exactly what you wanted to do, or how was that space for you?
Sure. So my parents, both, I wouldn't call them on my dad's side first generation college students, because my grandmother, rest in peace, she went to college in 1930s, 40s.
Wow.
But they were part of the first generation people to go to college. So I'm, more or less second generation college student. And so they grew up through the civil rights movement. My uncle, rest in peace, he marched with Dr. King.
Wow.
I learned growing up, I would always see him. He had dentures, and he felt like he wasn't old enough to have dentures. And I learned probably like 10 years ago that he actually had dentures because police officers knocked his teeth out with the
Wow.
butts of guns. Like they would do
Wow.
Russian roulette, literally Russian roulette to him because of his involvement in the civil rights movement. My grandmother's house was firebombed because my uncle marched with Dr. King for civil rights. So they recognize the importance and the impact that education created for their generation and themselves. To separate themselves from was frankly, a cotton picking community. My dad's from Social Circle, and he picked cotton as a kid.
Wow.
And so they recognize how important that was and instilled that into us. So my grandparents instilled it into them, and they instilled it into us. So much so that, my brother and I were in the gifted programs, and we just weren't taking school seriously because we could not align with an interest for the content.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some points where we almost didn't even graduate from high school. So they let us know, like, you got two options: go to college and get a degree. 3 options: go to college, get a degree, join the military, or go immediately into the workforce. And there was one summer where we were like failing our first year of college. We came home and we worked FedEx for like 6 weeks. Those are some of the hardest working people in professionalism, because it's nonstop. It is high impact. There is no AC. I did that one semester and I was like, nope, got to get my grades right.
You're like, that's all it took. This is a low intro. You're like, I'm good.
Yeah. And I grew up, doing manual labor. My dad made sure that we started working early. 13, we started a family lawn care business. But doing the shipping type of work, that is a whole different ball game. So shout out everybody who does that. That is not easy living.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to let Brian go in a few minutes. I wanted to talk about, I've been in education, like I said, for 17 years. And I'm glad that you brought up this point where when it comes to our young Black males, and their level of engagement or involvement, with education, whatever is being taught. I started noticing as an educator, like when I'm sitting in these ARDs and these different meetings, the type of language they would use when they describe certain kids, right? And so one kid would get Johnny is just so hyper. He's so, he's just bored. He's just being a boy and he's just all over the place. And I'm thinking, no, Johnny is just bad as hell. That's what I'm thinking, right? But they're using all this other stuff to describe why Johnny is not sitting down and why he's not doing his work. And then you would have Marcus, and it's like, Marcus is not getting it. He's not paying attention. I think something is, he has some type of learning disability. Let's go put him in, the resource classes because I don't have time to deal with Marcus right now. He's not learning it. He's not getting it. Something's got to be wrong with him. Just go stick him over there and let's just, forget about Marcus and focus on Johnny because Marcus is a distraction. But what we don't know about Marcus is that he's GT or he's bored or this work is too easy for him and or the content is not relatable or whatever it is. We're not thinking about those, different, I guess, concerns or situations when we're describing why Marcus is not learning. And so I want you to talk about that. I don't know if you ever experienced anything in that space, but when you spoke on like how you almost didn't graduate, now you're over here building stuff and your teacher's probably like, well, damn, I couldn't get Marcus to sit down and pay attention. Now he done built a whole damn video game. So, can you talk about, I guess, what that was like for you, where you're like, nothing's wrong with me. I just not interested in what you're teaching me. Like how was that experience for you?
Yeah, I think that's a larger issue with how language is used to describe Black people versus, quite frankly, white people. And it happens, different descriptions of men and women, but it's the context seems to be different, even though, the situation is otherwise the same. So I also think that traditional education has been broken for decades. And I don't believe that, given the same situation, two different people will learn the exact same way. But if we standardize a test and standardize a teaching process for that one method, anything that exists kind of outside of that framework is a problem because it jeopardizes the framework. So I think that there should be more effort put into personalized education. I understand that really does require technology because it needs to scale. But, in 2000 or early 2000s, 2003, 2004, and as I'm graduating from high school, that technology certainly didn't exist. So my teachers didn't know how to funnel my interest in technology into teaching me, history and trigonometry and all the things that I needed at least to pass the standardized test.
Wow, thank you for that. I know Brian's over here itching. When he starts rubbing his head, I know you got that bald head, vibe. When he starts rubbing his head and leaning back, I know he's about to dive in.
Man, the thing is, how do they say this? There's spice and variety, something like that. Mm-hmm. Just thinking about this podcast show and how we've had so many different types of individuals, and I'm just listening to your story, and I'm thinking about just so much of what I was exposed to coming up, and drawing some parallels and drawing some comparisons of not having access to some of the things you got access to or had access to, how my life could have been different. I could have gone in a different direction. And it makes me smile because we're talking about it right now. And just us talking about it is placing a seed in somebody's mind out there. Well, dang, I had no idea that was possible. Like you can actually build video games. There's kids out there that didn't believe that was possible. And just listening to this information births a new possibility in their mind. I look back when I was a kid, I was never exposed to coding or anything when I was younger. But I had this this internal curiosity of the electronic component of it. So getting inside the controller, that was one of the things I had a skill at. If my controller stopped working, let me get these little screwdrivers. I'm gonna undo this thing, and I would fix it. And I fixed it a couple times before it was just a wash. But
That's because you wasn't getting another one.
Right.
Like you're not getting another controller, so you better
I
like
already know it. If it ain't your birthday, if it ain't
Christmas,
you ain't
that's a
getting
wrap.
one.
That's a wrap.
I say that to say I never really discussed that phase of my life with my son. But then one day he asked me, "Hey, Daddy, I need a screwdriver, like a little one." And what you need a little screwdriver for? Something wrong with my controller. I'm like, what? He about to do the same thing. But he's been exposed to coding. He's taking electronic classes. He's taking engineering courses. Like he's done all of that before he even got to high school. And I wasn't even exposed to most of that until after I finished college. So in today's day, I feel like we got to be so much more cognizant on sharing our stories, because a lot of the things that we can share through our stories, our kids, they don't have access to that information in school. So whereas my son, he can go to school and learn X, Y, and Z when it comes to the whole coding space, but he may not get all the information that he can get in a conversation like we're having here. So, I say that to say, for those parents out there that come across this video, like you want to connect yourself or to connect your children with individuals like this. If you ever feel that your child has an interest in any area and you don't feel like the school is supplying anything in that space, you got to reach out, because the last thing you want to happen, and it's just the way life goes. We have these dreams, these ambitions, these things that we aspire to be and do when we grow up as a kid, but then life hits us. Teachers hit us, tests hit us, and then these are your options based off of where you come from, what you look like. This is what you should look at going to school for. And we end up a couple years into college just miserable. I don't want to do this, but this is all that I know to do. And we get out in the world and we're exposed to people like Marcus Howard here. Like, how did you find out about that? So if you don't mind, just kind of go into what are some of the conversations that you have when it comes to people who are completely awestruck when it comes to the space that you're in? Because I know there's not a whole lot of us in the esports space, but I know it's getting a whole lot bigger. They've got these collaborations with the HBCUs and such. Like, what are some of those conversations that you have with people that are just completely taken aback that this space is so big and you have a piece of that pie?
Great question, Mr. Street. And to answer a question that Dr. Hobson asked earlier, it's funny. My brother and I, as we were going through that kind of tech growth and development phase as young adults, we continue to get taller, right? And my sister stopped getting taller, right? She's 5'5" or something, 5'6", 5'7". We're 6'5". So every time we walk up to someone, especially people who were Black, like, oh man, I know you playing basketball, right? Like, without fail, every single time I had a conversation with someone who never met me, people who generally in the community, like, oh, you definitely play on the basketball team. And I think that speaks to how we as a community define success. It is either around entertainment or athletics, which I guess is a form of entertainment. Yes, there are Black astronauts and doctors and lawyers, but our community does not elevate those types of professions more than we do, entertainment or athletics. So what I'm doing is trying to fix that issue by speaking from a parent's perspective, because now I have kids. My daughter is 5, my son's 3.5. I can experience what it is to communicate to other parents and leverage that to tap into what they value, which is creating opportunity for their kids. And I have to give my parents a shout out. The reason that I was able to go to the magnet school and then have that technology experience is that they made major sacrifices for decades. When people would go on family trips when I lived in DeKalb County. Like we didn't do, I mean, we would go on like one trip a year, but it would be, you know, close to Lake Lanier or something, you know, nothing extravagant, because they were always saving so that they could buy a house. We could move into a new neighborhood. And even then, when everybody was going on trips, they stayed and they saved so they could pay off their house and have some money put away, you know, not a lot of money, but enough to help like that first year we got to school. But to answer your question, so I speak to that same voice because they wanted the best for us. So I say, you want the best for your kids. Here are amazing opportunities. First, I ask them what their kids like to do. Oh, like to make beats, or like to draw, or definitely got a sales, you know, charismatic personality. And I say, okay. And then I ask them what they think about video games. And even it's less in my age demographic, but between, you know, kind of Gen X, between where I am and where my parents are, there's still a heavy stigma in the Black community against video games. So I explain to them that it's a $180 billion industry. It's larger than twice the size of the film and music industries combined, right? It's so many opportunities. There are 100 STEAM career opportunities in it. And then once they understand that it's not just video games rot your brain, it's not just dumb entertainment, but there's professions and careers and business creation opportunities inside of video games, now they're willing to listen. And then I go from there and identify their child's personal interest with an existing opportunity in the industry. So I can show the parents, here's where your child is now. They love playing video games. And then here is where they could be with video games and their passion.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you mentioned, you asked them what does their child like to do, because typically that's typically our children, they're only asked that at the young age, and then they're, like I mentioned earlier, then they have things placed in front of them. What do you like to do out of this selection? Now, most kids, as they grow a little bit older and they lose that childlike desire, they start to look at those around them. Like, this person is being seen as popular because they play basketball, because they're an entertainer, because they're the class clown, or whatever it may be. And they never stop to think about what the alternative could be. So being able to introduce these new things to parents, to teenagers, to those who still have that brain that's developing, but they're in that stage where they can make a choice. They can choose which direction to go in. It's one of the things I feel that we have to, and it's one of the, part of HSBA. It's so often you see programs that they only put into the school and place it on the children, but they don't really give anything to the faculty, the staff, teachers. They go place it on the students, but they never give anything to the parents. So there's like a disconnect. The child takes certain information home and the parent shuts it down. No, we don't do that over here. Who been in your ear? Like, don't listen to those people. And then that child is torn. Okay, should I do what I want to do because this person showed me something else that's out there, or does my parent know best? So I look back to, I changed my major twice in college. And while I was, before I left high school, my dad told me what I should study in college, because what he was exposed to, the highest level of success, that's what he wanted me to aspire to be.
Mhm.
So I didn't know any difference coming from where I came from. So that's what I majored in. But when I got to college, I started to see different. So I ended up changing my major. Still didn't land where I needed to be. I ended up, for those who haven't heard my story, I pretty much got kicked out. My GPA dropped tremendously, and I got my mind right during that period. So when I did go back, I was actually doing something that I wanted to do, but had I not been exposed to real life, had I not been exposed to what possibilities were out there, I could have gotten stuck in that space that my dad told me to go into and just be dissatisfied, or who knows where it would have ended me. But ultimately, I love the fact that you aim to pour into individuals to give them those choices, those alternatives. But then you throw, what about gaming? And a lot of times, parents, we talk about video games. My baby about to be playing. Talking about we talking about work, right? So it's so often you and I we're both 36, and I can remember like day and night. My parents would be playing. Take your butt outside. I don't want to see you until it's dark. Don't come home until it's time to eat. Like
Right.
that was the whole mindset. And as I've become a parent, obviously I took on some of that initially, but then I started to look at technology and I started to look at some of the games. And some of these games have it to where it really stimulates children's thought process. And how do I develop this architectural piece to be able to get out of way if this person aims from that trajectory? When my son started playing, what is it, Fortnite? My
Fortnite.
son started playing Fortnite. I was like, man, and I told him this. You see what you're doing, right? That's engineering. You know, you can make a lot of money if you, I mean, keep playing the game, but when you're playing it, really think about applying that to real life. And thankfully, he's a bright young guy, and he was able to have some conversations with me after the fact about that. But I feel like that's one of the things that we have to go into having conversations with parents on is the day to day, the real life applicability of what some of these kids get from these games. And on that front, like if you don't mind, share some insight on that front with us as far as how you've seen esports be beneficial to these kids, to whoever you've been working with outside of the gaming community.
Sure, and I think it's a gold mine, especially for the Black community, because I don't know if you know this, that 83% of Black teens nationwide play video games. It's 15% higher than every other racial demographic for that age group. And actually, the Black community is the largest consumer of video games in the U.S.
Did not know that.
Didn't
So
know that.
we over index as consumers, but the flip side of that is less than 2% of the global gaming industry professional pool is Black. And here in the U.S., that's for every reason that, systemic racism, people start to roll their eyes. But, if you think about redlining, which can prevent you from owning a home, digital redlining, which prevents you from having reliable internet access. There's just, like you said, that the mentality in schools about someone's behavior not being focused versus them being a bad student, because how you're teaching is not the way that they learn. When you compound that interest from these different factors over the course of decades, this is why we have issues with wealth and equity inequality, or inequity rather, in the country.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was going to kind of add to this, gaming and code, all those things, engineering. I remember when I was in college, one of my good friends, Leon, um, I was complaining about the work I had to do, and then I saw his freaking notebook. I'm like, damn, that's one problem, and it's like 4 pages. And that probably explains why he has a better job than I do. I'm like, damn, I should have stuck to paying attention to coding, because this teaching thing is not paying it. But you know, when I look at even like the students that I've had, seniors, and I'm asking them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, it used to be this age or this space where you did dream about being, a producer and a rapper and a this and a that. I mean, now some of our kids don't even have that imagination anymore. They don't dream, of being anything outside of what they see, right now. And I think our students definitely deal with more trauma, nowadays. So that may make it a little bit harder. But when you think about gaming and different professions that take time, even being an entrepreneur, like, in order to make money in your business to flourish, like, it takes time, right? And so for us, in our community, and I know I'm guilty of that, like, time, how much time is this going to take? Because I need money today. I need to do
It's
something
due
right
on the
now,
first.
and right now. So, to do the things that you're doing, it does take time. Like, it's like, how long going to take you to build this, and when is it going to start making money? So talk about that. I know that we do live in that space, and it's not just the teens, but it's just something our culture in general of is going, moving. Okay, I'll get to that. I'm good at that. But right now, that's not making money. I need to go and do something else. So I want you to speak on, what do you do during that time where it's like, even speaking to wifey or whatever, even us as a woman, we're thinking like, okay, is this game gonna cut, is it gonna make us money? Because you spend a lot of time building something. We haven't seen any paychecks. And so I know in the beginning that's what it is, like, or it's always a building, right? You're always building something new, you're always creating something. I have an imagination. I can create a whole lot of things in my head, but thank God that we are now in this space where we can network and collaborate and partner, where I can say, okay, Brian, like, this is the idea of having. Now, I don't know how you put it together, but, and then he can put all the other stuff together. But I know my space, right? I know my area, I know my strength. But I want you to speak on just the amount of skills and stuff that goes behind, the amount of patience and all that goes behind building, you know, um, these different games and technology and computers and all those things. Speak on that, because I know that we live in that space of like, well, how long is that going to take? Or should I've learned this long time ago? Am I too old now to try to pick this coding thing up? Speak on that for us.
Sure. And then, Brian, I'll come back and answer your question because my short term memory is garbage about more career opportunities, specifically in esports. But it's all about, identifying the entry point, like the lowest barrier to entry so people can understand that there's opportunity there. I've been writing code for the last 15 years. And when I wrote my first program for HTML website, and this is the standard project that every coder gets, it's a hello world. All you do is build the website and it just says hello world, and you learn how to put the HTML on there, like start the web server, and that's it. Because if you keep it simple, then it's easier to understand, and it's less complexity that might become stress and a barrier or a reason for you to exit. So I think what we need more in our communities or we need are more programs that do that. And I advise a company called Sussum Studios up in Atlanta. So if anyone to see, they may have closed their application, but they're actually hosting a free 100% virtual game development camp this summer, co-sponsored by Microsoft Studios, where anybody who is over the age of 18 who is a Georgia resident statewide can log in and learn from professional game developers exactly what it means to put together a game. There's so many pieces in there. There's the code that brings it all together. There are the animations. There's the music. There's the visual art. There's the storytelling. I tell people and parents all the time that everything that's in the STEAM acronym, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, go into making a video game. Particularly the art, which is typically left out of the STEM conversation. But you can't have like a banging game if it doesn't have amazing music and visuals. And that is all art and story, right? That's what draws you in. So I think
anything, even music videos.
Right, mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's about identifying those local resources in the community where you can have a low risk environment to learn. And when I say learn, I mean fail, because you learn through failure. Right? You'll succeed a little bit, but may ultimately fail. And then that failure hopefully becomes a learning opportunity so that you do something different and better next time. And then it just takes, consistency, understanding that the discomfort of failure is a necessity for your success. And I still deal with that 15 years.
Say that again.
The necessity or the prospect of failure is a necessity for your success. And I deal with that as a programmer writing code for 15 years now, because software is always changing. There are new languages, there are new frameworks. The last corporate job I had to learn Java, which I hadn't picked up since I was in college. But they said, if you want to work here, you're going to have to learn Java. So I had to learn a piece of code that I hadn't written in 10 years. And it was frustrating. Like, I failed a lot. It was very stressful in the beginning, but it's just like riding a bicycle, right? And I tell my 5-year-old that. I tell her the road to success is paved with failure. And You learn how to ride a bike by falling off a bike. Like, that's the only way to learn. So
Yeah.
I think that that's important to teach to our kids and to our families. We got to encourage failure.
And it's applicable to life across the board. Like, there's so many things. I have conversations with my daughter and my son. He's 14 now, but I still, there's certain things where he will feel a certain way because he wasn't able to accomplish it the first go around. Such and such, such and such and such. They are so great at this. Don't compare yourself to them. You don't know how long or how many times they tried and they failed, but they never told you about those failures. So many of us in any area in life, we see the result, we see the end product, and that's what we emulate. We want to be that, we want to have that, but we have no idea what the road leading up to that was actually paved with. So I
Absolutely.
love that you make reference to that, because when we get to the point where we draw out a plan or we create a vision board and we incorporate those potential failures on that vision board, we incorporate those hurdles in that plan, that's when we can actually fall in love with the process and have such a more profound respect when we actually
Mhm.
get to that accomplishment. Michael Jordan said it once. I think he said, I ruined the game by being so good, or something like that, to
Mhm.
where people see him and they think that it's supposed to be easy because he makes it look so easy. But no, you don't see the work that he does behind the scenes. And Kobe
Absolutely.
Bryant, we hear more and more stories of how obsessive he was with practice, how he would be in
Mhm.
there for hours before the game, just going at it, thousands of shots. People don't see that, and they get on the basketball court and think they can just do a couple of crossovers and they're Kobe. Like, no, you got to put in the work.
Yeah.
But in today's day, it's something that we're in a clash with because of
Mhm.
social media. Whereas in
Yeah.
social media, so many people are becoming famous because of social media. It's the whole instant this, instant that. I want to get this hit of dopamine. I'm going to post this. If X number of people don't like it by this point, I feel like I'm a failure. I don't look as good, or I'm not as. No, we have to get people to think differently and not allow themselves to get sucked into that whole mindset, because it takes work. It takes work.
Absolutely.
There's so many people that will look at Dr. Hobson and see she's got a new website she recently put out with her Win with Why program, and you look at that and you're like, oh my goodness, she is incredible. Like, look at this awesome program. She presenting it well, man. Like, if let me put me up a website, maybe I can be as great. No, you don't know what it took for her to get to that point, and you
Mhm.
probably don't want to go through what it took. So figure out where you want to go. Understand that I'm going to fall on my face a couple times, but I want this so bad that it's worth it. If you
Yeah.
want it, but once it hurts a little bit, you decide you don't want it no more. You didn't really want it from the beginning.
You just
So
want the results.
Absolutely.
failure is a
Yeah.
necessity, definitely a necessity.
Yeah. And
I want
I'm
to.
gonna kind of say. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to quickly answer your question again before it slips my mind about the careers in esports. So you have, I think, the most obvious ones, and unfortunately, the index or the industry fixates on these two opportunities almost at the exclusion of the other 100 opportunities. But one is competitive play, so being on a competitive team, very similar to traditional sports, right? And then the other is content creation. And Dr. Hobson, to answer one of your questions, one of the other things I like to do is show examples of when I'm talking to Black families, Black people who are in the space who are successful. Are you familiar with Chibata Mitch?
Nah.
Chibata Mitch lives in Texas. He just spoke at an event here that I helped co-produce a few weeks back, a STEAM education esports event. He makes $40,000 a month to support his 5 kids and his family. And all he does is plays Madden from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. That is all he does. And he makes $40,000 a month doing that.
I really went the wrong way. Saving the
What
Wow.
kids ain't working for me. I need to save
that's
something
content
else.
creation, right? Content creation is what he's doing. He's building engaging content. He's a performer. He's an entertainer, right? He's good at playing video games. He's good at entertaining. He's getting ads and tips and sponsorships, and people are booking him like my team did when we brought him here to Tampa. But those are just two of over 100 opportunities. You have to think about all the back office stuff that makes him successful. He has to have somebody who is managing all of his streams. He has to have someone who is building his professional schedule like an executive assistant, right? You think about everything, every functional role that makes traditional sports work, and every functional role that makes the entertainment industry work. Combine those, and all of those, sorry, all of those exist within gaming and esports.
You know, and you mentioning that makes me even think about the traditional route that most of the Black community goes when it comes to sports and the entertainment space. We always want to be in front of the camera, in front of the mic. The ones that make the most money, you probably don't even know their names. They own the company that your favorite hip hop artist is actually signed to. They own the team that your favorite basketball player is playing for. So even in keeping it in that arena, we have to have those types of conversations. Yeah, you can ball, but there's X% chance that you're going to make it to that pinnacle. So while you out here hooping, when you get finished, take a shower and let's learn the behind the scenes work. Let's learn what an owner has to do on a day to day. So you can become someone like a Magic Johnson whenever you finish. You can become someone that's actually, behind the scenes. They know you only because you used to play, but there's so much more out there to some of these things that, these glamorous things that we're all about. I got to look up the numbers, but I was having a conversation with someone in the financial space not too long ago, and we are talking about how the Black community are the primary consumers. When it comes to across the board, we're the primary consumers. If we were to flip how much we consume and to actually become the producers, our economy would be out of this world. But so many of us, we want to be the one wearing the Gucci belt instead of the one actually designing it. And whenever we do have someone from our community that has that next luxury brand, it ain't Gucci though. Like, I can't be out here rocking that no name. Like, come on now. And that's one of the things we have to have more conversations about, like, become the next. And it's one of the reasons why there's so much that I don't like about the modern day Kanye West. Like, there's so much that he's done that like, come on, man. Can we get the old Kanye back? But the fact that he's been an owner, like he's being his own man and he's making bank and he's positioning his next generation to be able to contribute or to benefit from that. Who else is it? I read about, I read something today. I don't know the validity of it about LeBron James becoming the first billionaire that's still an active player. Mm-hmm. Like, he is not only on the court doing his thing, but he's doing so much behind the scenes. More parents, one of the things that I really pour into my kids and a lot of the youth that I mentor is look at the things that these people are doing off the court. That'll show you what type of person that they are. And that'll show you something that, okay, he is seen as a figure in the athletic space. So you feel like you're an athlete, you can still also do these things. And you're going to get so many more people to support you in these spaces because they already love you for what you're doing over here. So just really showing that there's a spectrum of any industry that you go in. You don't always have to be the front man. And sometimes not being the front man can actually put more money in your pocket.
You're right. I think one of the challenges we have as a community is that you said it earlier perfectly, that we talk about, you be in the NBA and NFL, but we don't teach those same kids like the percentages of players that don't make it into the NBA or NFL, or those that do make it who have to retire 3 or 4 years in, and then because they didn't manage their money, they're now broke. Absolutely. So there's so much that needs to happen from a financial literacy perspective. I remember, I think someone referring to those same stats you were talking about earlier. I think it's the Black community has like $4.3 trillion of spending power. Mm-hmm. And the dollar stays in the Black community. Every dollar earned in the Black community only stays in the Black community, I think, 6 hours.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And I think it's interesting, you hear not Black people talking to Black people whenever we say, systemic racism, financial or injustice in society, like, why don't you go back to Africa then? You imagine what would happen if overnight $4.3 trillion left the American economy and went to Africa, what that would do to America and to Africa,
Maybe we should try it.
they'll be apologizing real quick.
Hey, hey, okay, we wear the Black Lives Matter shirt. Just come back, please.
Right, and bring your money. Bring your money. It's funny. America loves Black culture, all the Black culture except the Black people. And one of the things that you asked about, my reason why, I read a report, I think 2017, that said that by 2053, which is roughly 30 years from now, the median wealth for households, Black households in America, will fall to zero. Mm-hmm. The median wealth of Black households nationwide will fall to zero in the next 30 years. Mm-hmm. That's in our lifetime. When our kids are adults, we will, you can have revenue and not have wealth. But that's why I do this, because I understand the potentially exponential wealth generation, generational wealth generation, or wealth creation opportunities in gaming and esports, especially when you understand that the metaverse, whatever that is or isn't, has been around for 3 decades. Video games are the first metaverse. So as trillions and trillions of dollars are flowing into this space, we are even in the esports and gaming space seeing non-Black culture appropriate and monetize Black culture without putting that money, any of that money, back into the Black communities. There are a handful of exceptions they do for PR purposes, but by and large, that money is not going back into our communities, and Black people are not being hired as not only regular employees, but ultimately the executive leadership that gets equity, so that when those companies are acquired or those companies go public, we can put the money back into our own communities. And then you add to the fact that less than 2% of venture capital in the US goes to Black-owned startups. Again, they're monetizing our culture, but they're not giving us an opportunity to share in the value that they are taking from us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you're speaking about, or what we're talking about. And just to kind of go back just a little bit, when I'm coaching or I'm teaching, coaches on different things, it's we don't want to embrace the failure, right? It's always stay away from the things that may not work, because, we define a lot of times ourselves by our success, by our statue, by, our status. And so if there's anything that may take away from us being successful or winning or whatever, it's like we tend to stay away from it. And I always talk about LeBron James, that he uses his platform well because he knows his worth. He knows who he is. So he's like, I can stop dribbling this basketball, and y'all can figure out what y'all want to do with y'all franchise, or you can let me continue to do what I love to do and speak have my voice and say what I need to say and make the type of impact I need to make. And they do that. They let him do that because they look at the pros and cons of like, okay, well, let's just let him dribble the basketball, because this stadium probably will not be filled with all these people, and the jerseys won't be sold, and everything else that goes on with his name. And I think that we have to really get to that point too, where it's like, what do I have to lose besides your voice, besides who you are? At some point we have to be okay with this may not work, but a lot of times it does work, right? And we end up watching TV and being like, oh, damn it, I thought about that 10 years ago, and now this person is doing it. And because we don't, number one, we don't stay anything consistent enough, right, to see something work. We try it and it's like, okay, this is not working. I need to go do something else. Or it's not making money right away. So we decide to put that off to the side and do something else. Or it's just, we just don't know, our worth. I know the other day I was speaking to Brian, and one thing he, kind of got on me about, it was like, stop saying you think it's going to work. And I'm like, you're right. Because when I hang up the phone, I'm like, I know this shit's going to work. But we discredit ourselves when we say, I'm not sure, or I think, or we give it a try for a little bit, we see that it doesn't work and we get away from it. So I like that you talk about failure, when it comes to gaming I'm sorry, in creation, because I'm the same way when I'm talking to my athletes. I'm like, you have your own lane, what you do and how you control your lane is all on you. Stop worrying about lane 3 and lane 2 and 1 and 5 and all these other lanes. Stay in your lane. You all have one objective, that's to make it to the finish line. You're going to have hurdles that are going to be placed in front of you. What are you doing between the hurdles? You keep running. You keep running, you keep running, you keep running, and teaching them that there's going to be trials, and for those who are, spiritual, there's going to be trials, there's going to be tribulations. We already know those things are going to happen. We also know that he has a plan and a purpose for our lives, that he's given us these talents and these gifts. But a lot of us don't get to, I guess, reap our harvest because we just don't plan anything. We don't stay anything long enough. We don't make the connections that we need to make. So I want you to talk about how has it been like in our community when it comes to networking, partnerships, collaborations? Are we doing enough of that? Are we doing it correctly? Do you see, has it worked for you, when you're doing this, or do you even see a value in partnerships and collaborations and so forth when it comes to our Black community?
I see value and I see some success, but what I also see is that, and I'm sure you all will appreciate this, the crabs in the barrel mentality, that we are so historically deprived of resources that we see someone else's success as a threat to our own existence. That's the crabs in the barrel mentality for those joining who don't understand that term. And so when we could be working and combining forces to maximize the impact of the opportunity, instead there's infighting. And I've experienced that firsthand. 2 years ago, Super Bowl came here to Tampa Bay, and I produced the first HBCU conference and career expo in the metaverse on a platform called Decentraland. And I was very intentional about making sure that there was representation, across age, race, gender, and geography for the event, but particularly focused on having Black people there because it was for HBCU students. And I won't name the names, but there were several people who I invited who were also trying to build their own kind of Black HBCU esports community initiatives, who joined and then reneged on being in the event. And then later I learned that they were launching a separate thing. And I would have gladly supported their success because there's enough space and enough need for all of us to be successful.
Yes, yes.
But that's unfortunately, that's not what happens. And to answer your other point, it's, one of the many awesome thought leader pieces in my book, and let's see if I can get this here with the glare off, is from Trinidad Hermida. And basically, she says her thought piece is about the importance of embracing risk as a Black community and encouraging our kids to go pursue those opportunities, because in that risk potentially comes high reward, and they have to be comfortable with that failure, because again, we don't see a lot of Black people leading Apple and Amazon and Google, all these companies that were born out of the .com bubble because it wasn't quote unquote safe. It wasn't what our community defined as success. And so now we have these same opportunities in esports, in gaming, in the metaverse, in blockchain. And if we are not encouraging our kids to go pursue those opportunities, we are perpetuating the same cycle that keeps us from generating that wealth.
Wow. That's awesome. I just really appreciate just everything that it's like when I'm speaking to coaches, I'm like, it's bigger than the sport, and you're the same way where, and all of us, when we talk about, it's bigger than what people can see, the lessons, the life lessons that can be learned from the gifts that we have, and our gifts will make room for us. We definitely have to do a better job in our community at collaborating. I may not know coding, but I may be a visionary. And if I say, well, hey, this is the idea we have, and then your mind starts going on, well, we could turn it to this. And then, when we learn how to do that, our community would be in such a better place. And our youth, I feel, will have more stability and guidance on, what they want to do. And for those who are interested in that space, whether it's gaming, or we all have some type of strength and, some type of gift that we can contribute. We have to get away from like, oh, well, I can't do any of that stuff. So, or I'm too old, or I'm too whatever. We have to get to that point where we're just bold. We're just saying, this is what we want to do. And um, if your heart is in the right place and you're surrounded with the right people, we don't have to all agree on the same thing, but if the common goal is to pay forward and to create this space of opportunities for our young men and women that are coming up, then it doesn't matter what we think, that our differences on how we think and what we agree or disagree on, because we can always come back to what is the goal, what is the objective that we're trying to reach, and that is our community. How do we become better, right? How do we pay forward? And that's why we created the Black Podcast, because we need to hear stories like this. It's more than just sitting there and creating these programs and then but how do you present yourself? Like you're your product, right? And when we get to that space where you're your product, I'm like that all the time when I go speak to coaches. I'm the product, right? So when I'm speaking about your why and being passionate and resilience and all these things, you have to look like that, right? And so I think that we have to be get away from leading by example and start being the example. you know Seeing what is Marcus doing, how do what happens to that kid that doesn't have access to his LinkedIn or to his, meeting kids where they're at, meeting people where they're at, right? You may not be able to create a whole program, and I'm not interested in creating a whole. I mean, if I can learn overnight. I mean, I got overwhelmed when you said the welcoming, the beginning stage of welcome in the website. I'm like, I can't. I just can't. When I go to Hobby Lobby, I have girlfriends that love being in Hobby Lobby, and I'm in there like, why is nothing in here is put together? Like, I gotta get out of here. So we have to just learn like what space that we're in and be okay and confident in who we are to be able to say, this is the idea I have. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And you make it your own. And you say, well, let me see how I can add to that. We wanted to create this space to build those relevant relationships, because our students, our youth, yeah, everybody says, oh, everybody has an opportunity. Yeah, we all have an opportunity, but we're not presented with the same resources. It's not all packaged the same. How many kids do you know are going to take the initiative to go and look up gaming and programming and whatever else? They may not do that. So we have to bring it to the system, right? Because the system is not going to bring, Mr. Howard in there or HSBA, because what if they expose these kids to something new, where they won't go take out these $1 million student loans, because now they're going to start building stuff at home and it's going to take it from our pockets. So we have to be the change. We have to be consistent with, this is what our strengths are, this is what we believe in, this is what we know to be true. And so create that space and just bring the students or the kids to it, instead of always just saying, well, it's out there. Because you can give a kid a bag of tools, but if you're not teaching them what to do with them and how to build, I mean, it's just like not giving them anything. So we just have to do a better job, in our community. And I really appreciate that you're continuing to press forward and you're continuing to stay the course, and not letting the distractions or the stigma of what Black men should be doing, what Black women should be doing. Because I know, even as a Black woman, being in the space of athletics, when I'm talking about our young men, they're like, she doesn't even coach football. What the hell does she know about, Black men? But I can share a story of what sports did for me, what sports did for people that I know, what sports have done for my brother, where he is now deceased. What kind of programs and tools could have been in place that maybe it could have saved him, could have saved me, could have saved other people that have gone on this path of being an athlete. I know one of my good friends. He was a really good football player, and then in our adult life we reconnected. But he was inviting me to an art show, and I'm like, and so I'm walking around looking at all this art. I'm like, damn, this stuff is dope. And then they're like, and for the, and for the creator and the art, and he comes out. I'm like, what the hell? Because we didn't know. We don't have those conversations of what other talents and gifts do you have. So I really appreciate, that you're continuing to show yourself and show not only the gifts that you have when it comes to programming, but you show that balance of being a family guy, having your kids, in that balance. I think that's so important for us to see that you can do both, something that you love and still take care of your business and your priorities. So I really appreciate that. And I know Brian does this too. I know you guys have this whole ball head thing going, the whole we're 36 years old. It's like, okay, well, whatever, but outside of that, I know that he also appreciates, and when he's digging deeper, it's like, man, this dude's interesting. But it's not until we hear your story. And I tell my kids that all the time. You can tell your story, or you can let somebody else tell it for you. So I really appreciate you telling your story, because looking at your pictures, looking at what you're doing, and then hearing your stories, like that, I would have never thought. I would have never known. So I just really appreciate you, letting us know more about who you are and what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's not easy to have an entrepreneurship uh, journey when you don't have funding. I've been at this 15 years now, and run out of runway recently. If you've been following me on LinkedIn, it's been a rough week. But I understand that I've had situations like that in the past, and just had to, breathe slowly, focus, and get my priorities in order so that my family is taken care of, and I can still move the needle forward with my company, even if that means I have to take a seat back on the company. As long as my parents, or my family are taken care of. I wanted to give some examples. I know, we're running on time here.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right, cool. So I wanted to drop this for everybody. Some specific examples of how esports can be used for education. And again, 83% of Black teens play video games. So what I learned was that video games help me understand technology. And then I understand that basically any academic concept can be taught from the concept of video games. So you mentioned programming specifically. There's a website, if you are at your computer, it's codecombat.com, codecombat.com. They're featured in my book. It is literally a video game that you play by writing code. So instead of like using a controller and walking 5 steps to the right, it makes you type like character, walk, right, and you pass in the number 5. And it'll give you like a mission. And the only way to complete the mission is to write like 20 lines of code. And every time it goes through each line, you can immediately identify the code you wrote and the result that it created. So if there are bugs, you know what line is wrong and why. And they have a ton of tools to identify that and help you fix it. But again, leveraging video games that people play and have fun with and understand and can relate to teach other concepts. I've seen video games teach chemistry, history, physics, calculus. I'm actually working on a project now to use video games to teach cybersecurity. So not like the general concept of cybersecurity, but like actually the commands you need to go hack into someone else's physical computer. There's a video game out there that teaches that. And I'm working with a group that in an educational capacity who are trying to create more cybersecurity specialists, because there's I wouldn't call it a crisis, but a massive shortage of cybersecurity talent here in the US. That is a high priority education goal for the country. So that there's one. The other is I just finished teaching a course at Johnson C. Smith University called Esports Business and Trends. And I literally assigned video games as homework. So I assigned the students play the games, and once they finished, they had to send me screenshots of the leaderboard to show me evidence they finished, and then write a reflection piece on their experience playing the game, and then to analyze the scalability and brand accessibility of those games. So I leveraged their interest for games to achieve the goal of getting them to write and to think critically. That course was rated 4.67 out of 5 for knowledge gained, 5 out of 5 for enjoyment, 5 out of 5 for me as an instructor and 5 out of 5 for the overall educational experience. So I know that it works. I would love to see, especially more Black communities, leverage that approach to teach all kinds of disciplines, because again, so many kids are playing video games. It's a missed opportunity if we're not leveraging video games to teach.
Man,
That's awesome.
so much truth. I've got contacts across the world that verbatim what you just said. You got to gamify education. Like that's what makes them want to do it. I had my daughter in homeschooling throughout the pandemic, and a lot of the education that I put in front of her. The school actually gave us resources and told us places that we could go, and it made it fun to her. So she wanted to do her homework. She was excited about school time. So I'm glad that you shared that. I hope that people who are watching, those who catch the replay, really take that to heart and realize, what you can do to position your kids to actually want to become more intelligent in any given space. So as we get ready to wrap up, give us some insight on where we can get the book. You got any events coming up that some people can register for? What's on the agenda and what can we shout out for you?
There's a big event coming up that I've been working on for, I guess, a year now. It was recently announced in Ghana, Africa, on national TV there, called Digital Diaspora. And I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it's basically going to be bringing the culture, the global culture for the diaspora to Ghana, for the purposes of teaching the diaspora how to create generational wealth, leveraging technology.
I love it. I love
Oh,
it.
you stirring up something like, oh no, they going to Africa. We don't have to start. Damn it. You told us to leave.
Don't leave.
We're going to take all my stuff.
That's
Wow.
beautiful. Now,
So
is there
where can we
a
go to
specific
find a
place?
website?
Yeah, is there somewhere we can go to?
We're going to announce the website soon. I think I'm not clear to say when, but it will be this month. So stay tuned. I'll let you know as soon as it's live, but it's going to happen soon. Again, got some of the brightest minds in the space and culture, intersection of culture and tech working on this. Shout out to Kwesi Hayford over in Ghana, Sebastian Burton, who is his gamer tag is Chosen. He's one of the first Black people that I know of to be on a nationally televised reality TV show for competitive gaming. So he was nationally ranked across 4 games, and then became an international esports consultant. EA actually flew him out to Barcelona, Spain to run their FIFA activation. So he's leveraged that global expertise, both from the business side and from the consumer as a gamer, to spearhead this initiative. Again, I wish I had the link because they just announced it 2 days ago. So it's not probably distributed yet, but stay tuned here. In short order, I will have that link to share for you.
Wonderful.
And then what about just in your book?
The book, you can find it on Amazon. It's called Innovate Gaming and Esports. It's a 300-page coffee table book. If I think Brian will appreciate this. Growing up, they had those Game Informers and Nintendo Powers in like the grocery stores, and the people would go there and like get the demo DVDs out of them to bring home and play. I actually have an entire chapter of game demos in my book, and about half of them are made by Black game developers, like this game Never Yield. So if you scan the QR code, you can actually play the game. The demo. I've got it's about 16 games. Again, about half of them are made by Black game developers, because I believe that representation is important. Both of these games made by Black game developers. Here's kind of an adventure game, the Super Mario Island 2. Here's a fighting game. See here, Black Salt Corruption. So that parents and their teachers, kids and their teachers and their parents can see that you can be a professional as a Black game developer.
Wow.
So where can we get that?
Innovate Gaming and Esports on Amazon. You can also go to innovationsoftheworld.com and search for the Gaming and Esports book. I'm blessed that it's been distributed to 17 cities in Florida, 26 states around the country. and 17 countries around the world in 6 of the world's 7 continents.
Well, all that's gonna double in a few minutes. All that's gonna double. I truly, I mean, I'm like, damn, I should have stuck to this. I mean, after I played Nintendo, the track game, you know, I used to run my ass off on that track, that pad thing. Oh, I used to be tearing it up on there. And then I moved. No, I went from that. Before that, I had the Atari. So I did the Atari, and then I went to the Nintendo. And I was like, shit, I just
You
went outside
you
all the
date
time.
you
Where
dating you dating
I was out
yourself
there
with that
fighting, but
Atari.
now I'm like, damn, I should have just stuck to it. But I'm just so grateful that you are in that space, because we definitely need more um, people that look like you and I, um, to say it's okay to be in this space, and what people once considered weird, you know, oh, he's weird, he wants to play video games or whatever. You know, when you start giving people education on, you know, how much money is being made, and it's not just about games, it's about creating systems and programs, and everything we do now is technology, you know, and it's going to only get, you know, so you're ahead of the game. But we just really appreciate just your story, and the amount of effort you put into educating not only the youth but just adults as well, is you know, because we are ignorant to a lot of things that are outside of our norm, right? It's not our fault. We just wasn't taught it. It wasn't taught in school, just like women weren't, you know, looked at as leaders in college. So people say, why you didn't go to college to be a athletic director? Because they weren't talking about women being athletic directors. They were talking about women being nurses, doctors, and teachers.
Very,
You know,
very.
so you know, it's just that we have to really start exposing our students to something different. And sometimes not even asking them, right? Not even saying like, are you interested in learning? Like just scan the code, and then you never know what might unfold, right? And so please continue to do what you're doing. And we have it up, innovationoftheworld.com, and it's also on Amazon. Get the book. Get the book. Doesn't matter if it's for you or not. Just get the book, try it out. Hey, give it to your child, give it to your neighbor's child, give it to the other adult down the street that's playing games. He might be probably in there building something. So, you know, who knows? And then I don't know if we talked about a lot of women being in this space, but this is not just for men, you know, there's women too. Get involved, you know, figure out how maybe you may not build a program or a gift, but I think it's important that if you get knowledge behind coding, you know, so you can fix your own website. You don't have to keep, you know, bugging Brian to fix things for you, because you can do it yourself. um, and so I think it's important that we all are educated on just having some type of knowledge behind technology, because I mean, our whole entire world is basically about to be you know, ran by it. So I just really really appreciate you, and we know that your gifts would definitely make room for you. And our struggles and our challenges are temporary, you know, and it's definitely going to come around for you. And it's already there, right? We just don't get to see it yet, but we know that it's there. And we are now family. So, you know, we're going to make sure that we are all prospering, that we're all getting to the next level and utilizing our gifts for the betterment of our youth, but also for our families, for the things that we want to do and what we want to accomplish for our own personal satisfaction, and living out our why. So thank you so much for just being you, and being you and sharing your story. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Before we leave, I would be remiss if I didn't follow up on that comment you said about getting women into the space. Ironically, 45% of gamers in the US are women. 45%, nearly half.
And how many are Black women?
Whatever the math of 83% of teens times 45%. So it's too late for me to do that math right now in the evening, but the opportunity, I will tell you that the Black women are there in the space as consumers. There again are a variety of ceilings that are preventing, and systemic forces preventing Black women from progressing. Right, the Black women deal with the challenges of being Black and the challenges of being a woman. Right, so it's magnified. But I also know several amazing Black women in the gaming space. glad to introduce you to Keisha Howard. We're not related. We just happen to ironically have the same last name. She is listed as one of the top 20 women in gaming.
Wow.
She lives up in Chicago, one of the top 20 women in gaming. Keisha
Wow.
Howard.
Wow.
Kat DeShields Moon, who works for Shell Games up in Pennsylvania. She is the best PR and manager and marketing and copywriter I have met in my entire 10 years working in the gaming industry.
Wow. That's amazing. And I mean, we don't know unless we ask. So I really appreciate, we really appreciate that. We're going to make sure that we stay connected. Please make sure innovationsoftheworld.com. You find the book, find out more of what Mr. Howard, Marcus Howard, Esports Howard is doing in his space, because he's a huge influence, just his story alone, and the amount of, he can meet you where you're at, right? So when you contact him, don't worry about whether or not you're smart enough or if you got degrees or how old you are. He has the ability to meet you where you are. So please make sure you continue to reach out and support the things that he's doing, and look out for the big event that he has coming up. And we believe that that's going to open up other opportunities for you. And so we're going to make sure that we definitely stay connected. So don't log off. Do not log off. We're going to put you in the backstage. We're going to close out, and then we're going to close out with you. But again, thank you for being you. And we are now family. So welcome to the Black Podcast family. And you will see more of us together doing some big things. So we'll go ahead and put you in the backstage. Did you have anything else that you need to leave us with?
No, just thank you so much for this opportunity. We have a lot of opportunity in front of us as a community, but again, we've got a 30-year, I don't want to create a sense of crisis or stress, but 30 years is what the projections say that the community has before we have that zero median wealth. So we can't continue to delay on this. This is action that has to happen now.
Absolutely. Exactly. Thank you for that. We're going to put you in the backstage. Don't log off. We'll be right with you.
All right.
I'm about to go look for my games right now. I don't give them away for $1 at when you have your garage sales, they're like 50 cents. I don't care, just take it, but it's just amazing to hear his story and how he makes that connection, right? We always talk about education, but if your education is not relevant to where the kids are understanding and retaining it, then it's not education. And so he has created this space with now for the people that are into gaming, or people that are into it, and even people that may not be into it, but if they're introduced to it and exposed to it, who knows what opportunities might come out of that. So we definitely need to make sure we do a better job, in our community with making education more relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the whole state, like people, there was this movie, and an alien or some aliens came to the world, and they were pretty much saying, you humans have like destroyed this planet. Now we have to wipe you all out to replenish the planet. And the governments around the world were like, well, we can change this now. We can change this now. Like, don't wait. Stop waiting until destruction to take action. He just gave us a timeline that has been laid out. Zero. Like, zero. So
nothing at all.
Nothing, nada, zilch. We've got to change the directions of where we're going, how we're technology. What's her name? Missy Elliott. Technology is where it's going. So get yourself in alignment.
And she actually introduced us to that stuff early on. Like we used to watch some videos, like, man, she is weird as hell. But she was already doing like all this stuff
before her time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, so, I can't stand the rain. You're like, damn, how they create that?
I'm telling you. Yeah. I'm telling you. I'm I love all of our guests. We have some great guests, but there's some that come along and they give us something that we can chew on, and like we gotta swallow this right now because it's time. It's past time. I don't want to
be a part of the zero.
Yes, like it's serious. So I'm just so grateful we were able to have him. So definitely check him out. You'll be seeing me share content of his across social media platforms, Dr. Hobson as well, because when we see individuals in our community that are doing the things that he's doing, we can't keep it to ourselves because we can't let zero come. We can't let
No.
zero approach.
And we
So
all not gonna fit in Africa, so we're gonna have to.
yeah.
We
True
better do
story.
something while we here.
Yes.
All right, so we'll see y'all next week. Please
Yeah.
make sure you tune in, and do your part and share this video. Don't just look and they talking about it. Don't matter if it's for you or for somebody else that's in your circle. Do your job and make sure that you share this video. Share the video, whether you're listening to it live or later on recording. Please make sure you do your part. We're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Twitch, Switch, where everything that has something attached to it that goes global. We are on it. So please make sure that you do your part and share. We love you and thank you for your continuing to support. I know I said a year and a half, but I meant 2 years, 2 years. And so I thank my partner for his patience in dealing with me. And I
Nice work.
really,
You know.
that's why he has no hair, because I stress them out. But we thank you and we love you. Continue to support, and please make sure you reach out to us. Right, do your part. We have way too many people in our community with too many gifts and talents for you to be keeping it to yourself. All right. So please make sure we're always open to collaborate, partnerships. So please make sure that you look us up, find us. We are hsba.com. Yeah, you'll find our website, our email, and all that stuff there. We are hsba.com, and find out how you can contribute to the things that we're doing, or even help us create something new. Add on to what we're doing, or we can come and support what you're doing. Please make sure you do your part. Look us up on wearehsba.com. Find out how we can collaborate and partner up for the betterment of our youth, so that we don't be a part of the zero. Okay, because I'm not trying to be a part of the zero. We love you. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Same time, same place.